Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I wanted to discuss a bit of minor news that came out a few days back. I mean, it wasn't even really news, but Massive released an Avatar Snowdrop Engine upgrade type video, and I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the stuff that they talk about in there, and touch on what some of that could mean for the eventual Division 3. I kind of touched on this and mentioned this in my E3 and Ubisoft Forward coverage video, where it was announced that Avatar is going to be a next-gen only game. I kind of talked about how some of these more technical elements could play into that, as well as future titles for Massive. But I kind of want to deep dive on it here, because this new video that they've released kind of shine a bit more light on what I was talking about, and I think that it backs up my claims a little bit more. So before we fully dive in, I want to shout out my buddy DA. He did a video on this topic a few months ago, back before obviously a lot of this stuff was revealed. I'm not nearly smart enough to talk about this until they released a video on it and I can actually kind of see what they're talking about. So here we are now, but I will leave his video linked down below if you want to go and watch it. It shines a lot of more light on that, and I think he certainly understands a lot of those technical concepts probably better than I do. So certainly go watch that if you are curious. Also linked below will be this tech reveal video that Massive released recently. I forget the exact name, but it's something about Snowdrop and Avatar and all of that. It will be down below if you would like to go and watch it. It's not too long and it's certainly worth giving it a view. So in the video, there's a lot of technical jargon kind of describing Snowdrop's improvements that have gone on for Avatar, but they summarize that this is basically the largest leap that the engine has ever taken since its creation. You know, ray tracing is a new big focus. It's part of why Avatar is going to be a next-gen only game, meaning it's only going to be on PC, Xbox Series X and S, and the PS5. Among other stuff, they talked about, they're increasing kind of the cloud and sky fidelity. Since you'll be able to fly in the game, they had to redo their skyboxes because obviously in Division 2 you never go anywhere near the sky. They increased the total visual potential for images that are in front of you, kind of the detail that can be fit into one frame, I would say. They talked a lot about nighttime luminosity and kind of the bioluminescence of the world of Pandora. You know, the Avatar movie gives you an idea of why a lot of these changes were needed, because if you've seen that, you know that it's just a lush environment with so many details and so many colors and so much everything that certainly the engine running in this game had to be very robust, and I think that is now what Snowdrop is certainly going to be. For people like myself, you know, where a lot of this goes over our heads, I can give one example to kind of help paint the picture a bit for you guys of what is going on here. If you played Division 1 and 2, then you have experienced Snowdrop improvements, whether or not you know it. Division 1 was made and constructed prior to 2016, whereas Division 2 was made within the window of 2016 and 2019. So certainly in those, in the gap between those years, there were a lot of improvements that were made. And so I can detail one of those that hopefully might shed a bit more light on what I'm talking about. A prominent example is that closer to when Div 2 released, there was a developer for Massive that was at one point explaining kind of angular terrain. And so Div 1, if you recall, only worked with flat angles, right? You had the streets that were at 180 degrees. The roads and the sidewalks were always flat. You had 45-degree stairs that you could go up or down, but they were always at that same angle. And then you had your 90-degree climbs, right, where you could leap up a brick wall, a fence, whatever it may be. But none of the terrain you ever walked on in the Division 1 was varied or angular, right? And the trees were uneven that you could see in like a few like parks. You would see trees. They weren't quite even, but you couldn't use those for cover, right? And so that was one of the limitations of Snowdrop prior to Division 1 being released and when it was being worked on, is that they said that they didn't have the capabilities to make these kind of angled terrains for whatever reason. I have no idea why that was the case. I don't know why that's a hard thing to create, but that was a limitation that the engine had back then. But then you jump to Division 2 and you see that angled terrain is everywhere. You know, Snowdrop was upgraded to support that feature. You can see misshapen trees that can be used for cover. The very plentiful hills and parks of DC feature variable and non-45 degree slopes. If you walk down a hill, I don't know, by one of the control points over in, what is that area, West Potomac, you know, there's plenty of different dips and curves and all that stuff leading down to the water. There's lots of puddles and potholes and craters and everything in the environment of Division 2 that you simply do not find in the Division 1 if you go back and look at what was going on in that game. And so that's one example, a very minuscule upgrade for the engine compared to what they're talking about for Avatar, but I think it hopefully paints a bit of a picture for what kind of features can really be expanded upon. And when you look at it, you're like, wow, they couldn't do that in the past. And so that hopefully gives you a bit of an idea of what they're talking about when they say that this is going on. Another important thing they mentioned in the video is that their whole goal with the upgrades was that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but they say, along the lines of, we've been able to create incredible cities with Snowdrop, obviously mentioning the Division, but we needed to be able to replicate the incredibly dense world of Pandora, which I mentioned earlier on in the video. There's so much non-conformity, you could say, with the world and the terrain of Pandora, whereas a city, like in Division and like in real life, is very planned, very angular, you could say, a lot of 90-degree angles on the buildings, the streets are very flat, all that stuff. But Pandora in a jungle world is a very, very different environment to something like New York or Washington, D.C. So shifting topics here to the Division 3, that really makes you wonder what they can do. I still think that main entry Division games, like 1, 2, 3, maybe a potential 4 one day, should have a central city. It's kind of in its DNA. But there's nothing saying that major areas of the total maps of these future games can't be outskirts or surrounding forests and nature. I think that'd be really cool, especially if it's next gen only, which I feel like the upgrades to the Snowdrop engine pretty much confirm that all of Massive's future games will be next gen only. I don't see them. I mean, their next game after Avatar is going to be Star Wars, and that's at least maybe 2 more years out. And so there's no way by that point, 3 years later, they're still making a game for Xbox One. So these new engine upgrades certainly mean that everything going forward will be next gen only. Whether it be the increased storage spaces, the computing and processing and rendering power of the new consoles, all of that can allow for much larger maps for these Division and for their other games. And so I'd love there to be a story that begins in the heart of a complex city and then stretches out to these forested outposts and secret compounds and etc. All of that take advantage of Snowdrop's upgrades that came along with Avatar. And overall, I just think that the potential that the devs have now is really tremendous. Ray tracing is also a big advancement that I mentioned earlier. I think a lot of people, when they think about that, they associate it with more dynamic lighting and, stuff to do with lighting. But one detail that I'll point out is that there was a former Division dev, I want to say it was Thailander, but I can't specifically remember, once explained how it can actually be used for a lot more than that, and notably in enemy AI. And that dev explained that it's theoretically possible that ray tracing could allow an enemy AI to see your character in like a mirror reflection. Let's say there's a mirror set up on a desk or something, and they look in it and they see you in that mirror from around the corner, and then they can become alerted just by seeing that. And so thinking about that and other possibilities is just wild. Like imagine in Div 3, there's a main mission at like an amusement park, and you get sent through the house of mirrors that you see, in a lot of in real life and in a lot of different movies and stuff like that. That would just be the greatest thing of all time. You're trying to go through this maze, you see like an enemy, way down the hall, you shoot it and it's a mirror, and then you're like, oh god, where is this guy actually? That would just be so cool. So yeah, in short, I just think it's important that we recognize how major all of these advancements are, between Snowdrop's continual upgrades it'll receive to the new possibilities of ray tracing, and how those two things mean that it'll be, practically all future Massive and Snowdrop games will be next gen only. I just think it's a pretty exciting time to be a fan of video games, to say the least. Alright guys, well I think that's going to do it for today's video. I just wanted to talk through some of that stuff with you guys because I'm guessing a lot of you aren't very versed in this kind of stuff, similar to me. And I think that once you begin to understand what they mean when they say that Snowdrop has been substantially upgraded, it can be pretty big and pretty exciting to hear about in regards to the eventual Division 3. That said, thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you can be updated every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts on all of this stuff. Does the Avatar tech video get you excited for the game and even Division 3 in the future? And what kind of cool feats of development would you want to see the devs attempt with these new tools at their disposal? Like I said earlier in the video, both DA's video on this topic as well as Massive's Avatar tech video that I've been talking about this entire time will be linked down below. But yeah guys, I'm really excited to see where all of this leads. I think we may begin to see some of these advancements take shape in Heartland, but certainly this widens the horizons for the Division 3 by quite a lot. Alright, thanks again everyone for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one guys, RogueGold out.